In this self-nip bobbly da baba dee ba doo doo. Greetings, listeners all around the world. You're listening to the UniquilibriuM podcast by Hypno-Athletics, Exercising Your Mind. I'm your host and guide, Hakeem Alibokus Alexander, and I'll be talking about all things metaphysical, hypnosis, and meditation for relaxation, sleep, lucid dreaming, and beyond. Get ready. Here we go. Assassinating Extraterrestrial Space Aliens, Part 2, Metatron. Yeah, I'm going to be working something in there about Metatron's cube. This is, as I said, it's a Part 2. I did a long rant a couple days ago about, well, it was early in the morning on November 16th. It's early in the morning on November 18th now. So yeah, a couple days ago. It's now 4 o'clock in the morning, and I had a lot to say. Here's the main thing. People like me and other ufologists, UFO researchers, people who research and talk about and study all things having to do with unidentified flying objects, unidentified aerial phenomena, also known as UAPs, extraterrestrials, aliens, space aliens, non-human biological entities, all those different kinds of things that have to do with either visitors from other planets and or other galaxies that are intelligent and usually either fly around or otherwise travel in vehicles or through space-time to, for whatever reasons, visit Earth. A lot of people have a lot of ideas about these things, and there are some problems I have with because hardly anyone is talking about, if anybody, at least not that I've heard, about actively resisting these creatures. And I think that there's good reason to resist, because, as I stated in the podcast before this, I called it how to assassinate extraterrestrial space alien abductors, kidnappers, and otherwise intruders or or something like that. I don't remember. I'm not even looking at it right now. That's not the point. That's the idea. And it remains the same. Except this time, I'm going to go in more detail, deeper, about just exactly how to assassinate these invaders. I mean, we already, I think I've made clear the why, right? I think I've made clear why we should do it. Because they're kidnapping people. They're abducting humans. They're doing experimentation on them. They're treating us like lab rats. Yes, humans treat rats in labs like lab rats, and I don't really like that idea either. I do understand that modern science believes there are reasons for testing different types of products before they go to market on animals, before they test them on people. It's still not very nice to the animals. Now, are we the same to intelligent beings supposedly from outer space or other dimensions? Where are they from? Are we their lab rats? Because thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, and maybe even much more, in orders of magnitude of 1,000 more, maybe, maybe 10,000, 10,000 more times than that. Maybe there are millions of people who just don't speak about it, or for other reasons. For example, a lot of people who have contact experiences, close encounter experiences, specifically close encounters of the fourth kind, which are being abducted, maybe they don't remember, because there's a lot of people who don't remember when it happens as it's happening. And now that I think about it, I wonder if the experiences that I've had are me having when I'm experiencing these things that seem like abductions or close encounters, are those experiences me in the moment having those experiences? If they're not directly physical, is there some kind of attack or assault or abduction or kidnapping, some kind of interaction with my astral body? Or is it a memory that has been capped? Is there some kind of memory capped, a block on my memory that's done in such a way that when that memory cap pops or breaks, or somehow I break through, that it manifests itself as a memory, as a multi-sensory full memory in my whole body, meaning that when I'm remembering it, I'm not just remembering it simply in just a few senses. Sometimes, very often, when people remember things, from what I know, and let me just speak more from personal experience, when I remember a lot of things, I'm remembering them from usually just a few of my senses. Usually it's visualization, and a lot more often the more powerful sense is that I'm hearing. I'm recalling the way things sound, specifically what people are saying, or music and things like that. Oftentimes more than what I'm seeing, even though I do have very powerful visuals and very powerful visual flashback. But what I'm proposing is that it's a possibility that people may not be me. I may not have the times when I thought that I was experiencing these close encounters with these non-human entities, these aliens, that they very well may be full-blown multisensory memories, full-blown multisensory recollections that are artifacts that happen due to the kind of memory cap, meaning due to the kind of, using a term from Men in Black, due to the type of neuralization. That flashy equipment that's like a small pen they call a neuralizer, where people who have close encounters or witness alien activity, the Men in Black erase their memories. So the memories that I have, or the experiences that I have that I can remember now, were those memories that I'm remembering now? Meaning, were those things in the actual incident happening, the close encounter? And the reason for me saying that, and this is me going a little bit off the topic of assassinating extraterrestrial space aliens part 2, but it's setting up something, it's setting up some rationale, or at least understanding where I'm coming from, so that we can move forward with how to do this. And some of the things I talked to before, I'm going to set it up with self-defense and then counterattacks. So again, what I'm saying is that I wonder if these memories that I have of close encounters, are they the incident that the incident itself, or the incidents themselves that I'm remembering, or am I remembering the memory? Because, so here's why I'm saying that. Oftentimes, myself and other people who have these experiences of being abducted, oftentimes we're having these experiences or these flashbacks either as we're going to sleep, when we're waking up from sleep, or sometime in the middle of the night during dreams. or having these out-of-body experiences. That's usually when people, and again, I'm speaking personally for myself, but when I say people, I'm also meaning because in the past 13 years now, 12 or 13 years now, I've been researching extraterrestrial close encounters. And hey, that might be a new acronym, ACE, Alien Close Encounters, but I think that just close encounters suffices in the community if you're in the know. Anyhow, because so many people, as I was saying before, many people don't remember. I think that there may be many, many more people who this has happened to that simply don't remember because they're not reporting it. And if they do have some kind of flashbacks, or they do remember, they brush it off as being just a dream or a nightmare, because that's what a lot of these experiences are, which goes again back to the title of this in the previous podcast, which is Assassinating Extraterrestrial Space Aliens. And the previous one was How To. But I didn't get into that much about how to assassinate them, actually. This one will get into that. I'm talking about self-defense first, and then how to counterattack to assassinate. I really believe that if these things are happening and it's very uncomfortable for us, if we can, we should fight back. Now, am I saying that I know what's going to happen if we fight back? Are they going to kill us? I'm not sure what happens to lab animals if they bite the researcher or the scientist that's there. Do they euthanize them? I don't know. From what I know about that industry, a lot of the researchers may care about these animals, but the kind of care is, I don't know. It's very strange that the things that's done. I'm not going to get into that, but there is a phenomenon that's going on. And it's very important that we look at all the parts of what's happening with these supposed alien abductions. A lot of times these happen when people are asleep, and I'm going to touch on that a little bit later. But so let's go into this now. So why assassinate them? And first of all, why self-defense, right? Well, most alien experiences, most close encounter experiences are not positive. From what I've been reading and what I know about, with some exceptions, like with CE5 and Stephen Greer, for example, the close encounters of the fifth kind, right? Well, we'll talk about that a little bit too. But now, I'm open to a lot of things. I'm not saying this is so cut and dry. I just want us to think about this. Most alien experiences are not positive. Now, could it have been influenced by some of the earlier cases of alien abduction? One that I'm specifically talking about is the case of Betty and Barney Hill, who were driving and had a close encounter, and they lost time. And they lost memory, and they woke up somewhere else. And then later on in their lives, they started having nightmares about these alien abductions, about being experimented on and having pregnancy tests done on them, and having, body fluids extracted from them and things like that. Are these, are the subsequent, are the following experiences that a lot of people have because of those stories passed down the line? Well, in my personal experience, and I believe this would be with a lot of people as well, most people like me have never heard of the case of Betty and Barney Hill until after we had similar experiences. The only reason why I heard about and I know anything about Betty and Barney Hill being abducted is because I had at least 3 experiences before I even thought it was something to look into. Before I even had any idea that this was something to look into at all. And it took me 10 years after the an incident with the more popular Greys before I even started considering that there was something going on. And that goes to these memory caps that I was talking about earlier. So, and also at the time, and I still haven't actually, to this very day, I still haven't watched the movie by, I think it's Steven Spielberg, called Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And I think I'm going to watch it in a little bit. I mean, I've seen parts of it on TV. I remember some little boy, and I remember seeing the spaceship, but it was all bright lights, and it just looked so fake to me, even at the time. I never was interested in that. Some of the things about aliens that I did have exposure to were from cartoons. Like, specifically, most aliens that I came in contact with were Transformers cartoons, you know, Autobots and Decepticons. And G.I. Joe didn't have any aliens that I know of, not that I recall. They did have some people who like mutated into snake-like creatures because of these spores with Cobra Commander. Anyway, Thundercats were kind of like aliens. They implied it that they were aliens to Earth. I mean, there was Mum-Ra, and he, you know, was a mummy with powers who had, you know, lived in a pyramid, a dark pyramid, and the Thundercats came from another planet, Thundera, to third Earth, right? The third planet from the sun. And so they were aliens technically. They were humanoids, but they were half human, half feline. But I didn't have exposure to gray aliens, nor any of the intricacies that I'm going to touch upon and go through as I talk about self-defense against these aliens, these extraterrestrial intruders, these invaders that I'm considering to be enemies in many cases, simply because of the fact that most people are not having positive experiences with them. So I did not know of the Betty and Barney Hill case, and I have not yet watched Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and my only alien experiences were, like I said, with some cartoons, Thundercats, you know, very specifically. Also, I did like a show when it came out called Alien Nation, but those also weren't gray aliens. They didn't look anything like them. There was, I never got into the show Star Trek either. As a matter of fact, I didn't watch the Star Trek TV series until the more recent reboot of the Star Trek movies came out. And with, I think, is it Chris Pine? I think that's his name, who played Captain Kirk. And then my friend Kevin, who him and some friends, they do a comic book podcast called The Real Short Box, and we were roommates, and I didn't watch those. So anyway, whenever the reboot of Star Trek came out, that's only the first time when I started watching the Star Trek TV series. I binge watched all of them, and then some of the movies that it gave me. So whenever that was like in the 2000s at least. I mean, it was definitely after 2004. So it must have been somewhere between 2004 2008. I'm not exactly sure when the movie came out, but so I wasn't into alien stuff. I wasn't one of those people. I didn't even know there were people like that. I saw Independence Day, of course, with Will Smith. Thought that was a great movie. But you see what the aliens look like in that movie. And the experiences that I had were nothing like any of those. And the very first time that I know of seeing gray aliens as the ones that I now know are involved with close encounters with people and some abductions or at least experimentation or other visitations, one of which that I know that I had, there was one out of two that were very, very unwelcome, was in a movie called Paul. And that movie is interesting all in itself because of things like a guy who had the name Lorenzo Zoil. And if you don't know about Lorenzo's Oil, a movie, I mean, there are so many incredible connections, but I don't want to get off on that just yet. So I did not start researching aliens or UFOs until about 2008 or 2009. So this is like 9 or 10 years after I first saw the Greys personally. And I first saw the Greys when I was staying in a house with a girlfriend of mine in Coral Gables, which is South Miami. She was a student at University of Miami. And I was listening to Linkin Park, and it was in the middle of the afternoon. If I even think about it, I can remember the direction that my feet were facing, which would be, if north is that way, my feet were facing to the east, my head to the west. The door was to the left of my feet. There was a window by my head. I was laying on the bed, and there was a small gray alien, maybe 2 or 3 feet tall. I don't know if it was standing or straddling my chest, and its head was moving back and forth so fast. It was like a blur. And I don't know if its tongue was hanging out, if it had a tongue or some, but it just was, its head was moving back really fast, and it was really trippy. It was creepy. And then there was one at the door of the bedroom, standing up with its hands by its side on its hips, its arms bent on its hips, and it was just looking back and forth, slowly, looking at the door, looking back at me, looking at the door, looking back at me, but very robotic, the whole thing was very creepy. The whole thing was very, very creepy. And it wasn't until many years, I think I actually spoke to my girlfriend about it at the time, but nothing really came of it. It was just, to me, it was just a strange dream. I wasn't really into it, and I didn't even know what to call them. At the time, I didn't even have the word the Greys in my vocabulary to give them that name. And it wasn't until years later, to like 2008, 2009, that I started researching, because the experience kept haunting me. And there was something about that and the other experiences that I had of close encounters that later led me to research more, because it was qualitatively different than my lucid dream experiences and even astral body experiences, out of body experiences that I've had, which lucid dreams are so real in themselves, except for the fact that I know the quality is different because of the things that I can do, that it is a dream. I become aware that I'm dreaming, which is lucid dreaming, and then I can control many aspects, if not the entire everything I want to in the dream, which I call super lucid dreaming, and some others call it super lucid dreaming as well. But there's something different, very, very different about the quality than dreams that make them stick out. And another incident before that, and this one I was an adult. I was about 24 years old at the time of the one in Miami. No, or maybe 22, almost 20, going on 23. Because I left South Florida and went to Los Angeles, California in around, was it 2000? 2002. Oh, no, yeah. So, yeah, I was probably about 23 or 24. Anyway, so before that, I had an experience where there was a woman who was blonde, and I believe she had green eyes. I'm not sure. I could just be filling that in, but she was blonde. She was scantily dressed. She reminded me of like a Wonder Woman type of figure, like that kind of outfit, with the gold tiara on her head, not very heavily dressed. And we were in an enclosed area, but it was outdoors, and it was in New York City, and it was in it seemed like a courtyard, or like a basketball court would be, like a fenced-in full-size basketball court, a full court with a very high fence around it, all the way around. And the fence, there was a wall, a short wall, maybe about 2 or 3 feet high, the wall. And it was like a gray, like a dull gray paint on the concrete color all the way around. And the fence came out of this 2 or 3 feet high wall, enclosure, and this woman was very close to me talking to me. And now when I say talking, there wasn't much that was said, and it wasn't even said to me, which is an interesting aspect of what I learned later. I mean, because this one was way before the incident in South Florida when I was an adult. So this one, I was a teenager and about 13, 14 years old. And at that time I lived in Florida, but I lived in Fort Lauderdale. But this incident could have been a memory, right? Like the memory cap broke that I talked about earlier. But because I was back in New York at the time. And then all of a sudden, there's three main things about this story that later on just blew my mind. So first one, she wasn't talking to me. She telepathically communicated. I just knew the word Andromeda. Now, at the time I thought that was her name. I thought it was like a name like Andrea or Amanda, Andromeda. That's what I got. And no sooner did she communicate this Andromeda to me, did I see out of the corner of my eye, because she was standing a little bit off to my left, and then from the sky in the left, and then it came and hovered down and landed in the fenced-in area, was for all intents and purposes, a flying saucer. It was pretty big, and then out comes very quickly this green-skinned, reptilian, aquatic-looking being who very quickly shot her, or some other way injured her by shooting her with an energy device or a heat laser of some kind that hit her right in between her chest, where it left a black burn hole right above her breast and her chest bone. And it was very disturbing to me that this happened. And then before that, many, many years before that one, I was about 8 or 9 years old, and I was laying down in bed, and I had a bedroom by the front. It was above. We had a closed-in porch, and my bedroom was above the porch in the Bronx, New York. And I opened my eyes, and these two creatures were outside of my window on the roof that covered the porch, the front porch. And it seemed like one of them was on all fours, like it was about to crawl in the window, or it was almost like it was like a domestic type of animal, like how we have dogs. And one was standing up. But the thing about them was they were both it was like almost they were made of shadow. And they had praying mantis looking eyes, like upside down teardrop shaped. And they were red. Not quite glowing, but I could tell that they were red. And the one that was standing looked like it was very tall, or maybe it was just because it was so skinny. And I'm not sure if it had a high collar on or not, but it just... And the thing is, now it's disturbing now, but at the time I don't remember feeling fear. In any of those three incidents, I don't remember feeling fear. I remember being upset that the woman got shot. And I remember feeling like I had like a crush on her or something like that. Like I just remember feeling sad that she got shot. Anyway, and so in all three of those instances, I don't remember feeling fear. And now to comment on that, it very well could be that the lack of fear that some people may feel in the midst of those incidents could be part of the cloaking system, the cloaking device, or the cloaking technology, or the hypnotic or mesmerizing or brainwashing or nullifying techniques that these different creatures are using, because it's part of, because if here's something I know about being a clinical hypnotist, is that something that helps you to remember something besides the sense of smell are emotions. If there's an emotion tagged to something, it's more likely that you're going to remember something that has strong emotional content. So maybe somehow these beings are able to stifle the emotional aspect of these experiences in order to be able to put on a memory cap. Maybe the memory cap holds more if the emotions are not strong, if they're not strong or the emotions are not present. So anyway, just walking it back a little bit, so there's a different quality about all of those experiences, different from dreams, which is why I started researching these experiences later, because they are qualitatively different from dreams. And that's what made me want to start researching it. However, I do have to say that the dream state and these other altered states, like out-of-body experiences that I've had, are somehow related, or maybe because of the ability to lucid dream or have out-of-body experiences, or maybe because of these close encounters, I'm more able to lucid dream and have out-of-body experiences. But they're related somehow because they tend to get very connected. The more that I'm able to lucid dream, the better my memory becomes. And there's something about that state of mind that helps me to remember these experiences. And also, while I'm on the subject of, as I mentioned before, about cloaking devices, that maybe somehow they're able to manipulate, to nullify, to neutralize the presence of emotions in order to further diminish, to take away, to steal the memory, right? Like the neuralizer in Men in Black. Another part of that is creating, somehow they're able to manipulate the chemicals in our body, or the rapid eye movement, or the state that we're in when we're sleeping. Or maybe these things do happen when people are sleeping. Perhaps it's much easier to keep people asleep, or to somehow do something to our brains or our biochemistry somehow while we're already asleep. That also is part of the cloaking device. It's part of the manipulation. Hey, these people are sleeping. We know that dreams in these people are something that can be called into question because of how humans regard dreams in the imagination as not being real. So we're going to take advantage of this state of mind that people are in, for the most part, and give it this dreamlike quality and remove some of the emotions from it, so we can put a cap on the memory so they don't remember this stuff. But then again, you got to also remember that there are lots of people who've had these experiences, just as I have, while wide awake during both the night and day, not only having close encounters with beings, but seeing, mostly, for the most part, flying vehicles in the air. So aerospace types of vehicles. Walking down the street in nighttime and day. More often I've seen them at night. But so the whole thing about these things just being an illusion, an artifact of sleep, that gets taken away. That idea can be put down a level from the fact that I've had other experiences while I've been wide awake and walking around and totally conscious and looking up at the sky. And also that the quality of these memories are completely different than lucid dreams and out-of-body experiences and other types of hallucinatory experiences that I've had. So I've used a lot of hallucinogens, LSD for example, but I did this much after, when I was an adult, and I have already had, and by the time that I did that, I had already had a few close encounters already, and a few of them, well, a lot of them afterwards, but not immediately afterwards. And interestingly enough, Now that I think about it, none during the times that I was using hallucinogens. Very fascinating. Okay. So anyway, so there's something qualitatively different about dreams and these experiences and these memories and maybe what is going on with these experiences. Are they able to manipulate and nullify, neutralize our emotions somehow? Do they use the cover of dreams and sleep? Because these are things that we humans regard as something that could be called into question, especially with how, our very physically based society, our very materialistic society regards the mind and memories and dreams. It's not real, right? And of course there's false memory syndromes and things like that. So maybe they're taking advantage of that. But what then of the experiences that we have when we're wide awake? So yeah, it could be partly cloaking device that calls into question. So, and that whole idea, it could be a very well orchestrated psychological operation by these beings that have these close encounters. These beings, these aliens, could very well be the ones who have flipped our understanding of reality on its head and have us believing that the material is the primary reality and that our concepts and mind and thought should be called into question, to lend even further strength to this idea that people are crazy who think they've not only, let alone not just seen a UFO, but to have seen beings of these UFOs and then being abducted and even maybe taken to other planets. Yeah, this is when they start saying that we're crazy, right? Okay. So, I'm going to take this moment. It's been 37 minutes or 35 minutes, something like that I got to get into the self-defense. So, I touched on this before, but I didn't get to it till the end of the other podcast where I had talked about the similarities and somehow why many of these experiences happen when people are having sleep disturbances, and some very common ones that can be terrifying to some people and were to me at first are sleep paralysis and sleep apnea. And sleep paralysis is what it sounds like, is that you're paralyzed when you sleep, not permanently, is that you can't move no matter how much you struggle when you have a sense of dread or feeling like there's an entity or something around you. And of course there's a medical explanation for this. The same chemical that causes our muscles to not be able to move so that we don't act out our dreams and flail around and stuff like that doesn't quite lift when we become conscious, like as lucid dreamers, for example, and so we're stuck for a little while. And then there's different kinds of parasomnias and different kinds of pathologies or diseases or defects, health conditions that can cause people to stop breathing excuse me, while they're sleeping. Get a drink here. That cause some people to stop breathing. And all of these things can have an effect, sort of like a dream incubation effect, meaning things that are happening in your environment can influence the content of your dreams. I've done lots of experiments with that on myself, and I know that is a fact, at least for me. And there are other researchers who've done experiments with what's known as dream incubation. I have to look it up. I think MIT has done some research on dream incubation. Anyway, and I also have a self-hypnosis program called that uses the term incubation in it because in the process, because it uses the same type of concept. Although when I created it, I actually wasn't familiar with there being such a thing as dream incubation. So anyway, maybe I'll put a link to my process later or talk about it later, but I don't want to get into that. But things that are happening outside of you, or things that might be happening to your body, like a disease or a health condition, pain in your body somewhere, the fact that you can't breathe or you can't move, can be pretty scary, and then that can cause your mind to trigger an excuse. Why is this happening? Well, I can't move because I'm being held down. I can't breathe because I'm being suffocated. And then it comes into being held down by who? By what? Being suffocated by who? By what? And the mind then comes up with all kinds of things to fill in the blanks. Again, these types of phenomena that human beings naturally experience because of pathologies, because of diseases, because of parasomnia, can also be taken advantage of by these aliens, these extraterrestrials, because when they do it, knowing that their invasions, their intrusions into our lives, when they can manipulate certain aspects of their intrusions into our lives to mimic these things that happen to people, it's much easier for people who have these experiences to have our experiences called into question. You see, it's very clever. If you understand what I'm saying here, is that they piggyback basically on things that naturally happen to people. They've studied, they know what it's like, the experiences that people have when they dream, what experiences it's like when people have parasomnias, when they have sleep apnea, when they have sleep paralysis. Maybe they've been studying people for thousands of years. Maybe they've abducted, they've kidnapped people a long time ago and watched them sleep. Maybe they've had beings observing people back when they were very, very religious, or very superstitious, I should say, and people were talking about demons or ghosts or things that they had happen to them when they couldn't breathe or couldn't move when they were sleeping, and they started to intertwine their experimentation in with these type of experiences as time goes along. Who knows? I don't know for sure. I just know that these experiences are happening to me and lots of other people. But I wanted to get to the self-defense aspect. So a lot of these things could be used as cloaking. But one thing as part of a start for self-defense is if you find yourself not being able to breathe or move, that can be very terrifying. And it's very difficult, no matter how much you struggle to move. Sometimes it feels almost impossible to move. Like you feel yourself struggling so hard against this force, like these restraints, and you just can't move. But one thing I found that you can do is you can take a breath in. You can inhale. You should suck that breath in your mouth and or nose as hard as you can. That's the first order of self-defense. Because part of the fear and terror that happens when we're having these experiences is not being able to breathe. You feel like you're going to die. So that's the first part of the self-defense, is taking that deep breath in. That deep breath in, because it's sort of like if you fell into some water, or you went diving into a pool, you would take a breath in first, so that you can have some breath while you're underwater. And maybe so you can swim underwater for a couple seconds or maybe a minute, right? But if you didn't take that breath before you went in, you would have to come to the surface much more quickly, because it's very uncomfortable when you can't breathe. But I say to help remove a little bit, to take a little bit of that edge off of the fear and that feeling of helplessness, there's something you can help. Take a breath in until you can get yourself free. And something else happens when you take that breath in and you fight against these restraints or this feeling that you have. It also helps you to remember the experience much more acutely. But it's a form of self-defense. Second thing is fight. One of the things that I do is, it first started because of my superstitious leanings, because I used to think that some of these things, even though I had experiences with those praying mantis types that I learned later were called insectoids, and I had seen the reptilian guy, but I didn't know that these were aliens. I didn't think in those terms. Even though I had seen those things before, I had regarded some of the things that were happening to me as demonic or evil spirits, because I was very heavily influenced by the Catholic and Christian churches. And so I was a singer for a death metal band, but I had started making this crazy growling voice ever since I was 13 years old. And so what I started doing when I would feel like I was being restrained and I couldn't breathe, I would take the breath in and then I would start to growl or yell, just really make an angry, aggressive sound like a dog, or I imagine maybe I'm like a werewolf or I'm a monster myself. And at the same time as I'm doing that, I'm making a mean face and I'm struggling against these restraints, trying to sit up. Sometimes I started even swinging my fists, like punching into the creatures or what I thought I was being restrained. My point is fight against it. Do not just passively lay in these situations and just take it. The first step in self-defense is fighting back. And for something like this that we have no idea what's going on, we have to start changing the story. We have to start turning the tables here a little bit. What's going to happen? Hey, look, I'm willing to be the first one that gets killed by an alien for fighting back on the operating table or in my restraints. Because I do it. I'm still alive. And they don't mess with me much anymore. I haven't had an incident for quite a while now. But one of the last incidents was 2 years ago, 1 week before Flora Elizabeth Carrasco, my wife, before she died. And this time it was the most that I had seen at once together. There were definitely more than two. I think it could have even been anywhere from 4 to 7 of them, but that I'm not sure. I just remember seeing them, and I was laying down, and they were all around me, looking down at me. These were grays now, by the way, what people typically call the grays. And and what I do remember, I wasn't afraid. I was completely fascinated by. I actually got excited by what was happening. And it was because I hadn't seen any of these creatures for a long time, and I had been really getting deep into lucid dreaming and out-of-body experiences. I was really studying it and researching it more and looking into it. And I was having a lot of out-of-body experiences and having a lot of lucid dreams. But when this happened, it was incredible. And, at the time I was still talking to Flora. We would talk on the phone every day. But a week before the very last time I would speak to her, I had one of these experiences. And so, but they're usually not pleasant. And what could be pleasant about being on an operating table or being strapped down against your will? So the first thing is to fight against. The first thing is we need to learn how to breathe. When this situation is happening, I know I say this over and over again. I said this before a lot in the previous podcast, but this is the first self-defense aspect. So start with this. If this happens to you, if you have these sleep paralysis experiences, or especially the sleep apnea part, breathe in. That's the first thing. Get that breath in. Like I said, I compared it to like diving in the water. You need to take that breath in so you can swim a little bit. It gives you time to think. It gives you more time. It takes the edge off of that panic, because now you've gotten breath in. You have that breath in, and that's very important. And then the second thing is let these creatures, let these aliens, let them know that you're angry, that you don't like this. Express it. Clearly express it. That you're not down with what's going on. Right? This is not okay with you. And then the next thing is to